Hi, I'm Lisa, and I did leave school at the age of 11. It's a little bit unusual, I guess, but one of the reasons was that I was in a nice primary school and I had the option to go to high school. I went to one of those open days where you go around the school and have a look at what they've got. Um, and two things I noticed. One was that all the students had to wear a school uniform and the girls had to wear a skirt. And I never wore skirts. I've never worn skirts in my life. And that really put me off. And the other thing was that girls and boys had different subjects at that school. Girls couldn't do things like woodwork. They were separated in science classes. They couldn't play the sports that I like soccer. So I decided actually, instead of going to high school, to learn at home. So I actually taught myself for around 5 years through the high school years. And I learned whatever I was interested in. I loved music and I loved poetry and I loved reading and lots of different things, sports. And then I fell in love with astronomy, and that's what I ended up doing in my life. So I'm just really glad that I got that opportunity to just direct my own learning, and that was really cool. I fell in love with astronomy when I was about 12, and I lived in a small community, a small village actually in southeast England. There wasn't much to do at night. There was no, places to go out or anything, but the skies were dark. So I used to go outside with my dad and look at the stars and just kind of take it all in. And that made me really fall in love with astronomy. I saw some really cool things like a comet one time and the planet Mars. And I thought that was pretty cool to actually look at the stars and imagine what was up there in the universe, what was out there that wasn't part of my everyday life. And I found that really fascinating. So I read a bunch of books, got really excited about astronomy as a potential future career. And it kind of went from there. Space is very cold. Absolute zero is the minimum temperature possible when molecules are not moving. They're just sitting still. That is minus 273 degrees Celsius. Space is 2.7 degrees hotter than that. So it's minus 270 degrees. It's quite cold. It's really important, I think, as well as your schooling and all your exams and stuff, to get some experience and to get some practical knowledge and practice at doing, innovating and working in STEM. So what I did when I was younger, I joined my local astronomical society, so an astronomy group in the community, and also got some practical experience. So I borrowed a telescope from one of the members of the group and learned how to use it, learned how to do photographing the stars. And then when I went through my uni and my various exams, I got some work experience too at an astronomy organization. So whatever part of STEM you're interested in, whatever you're interested in more broadly, I'd really recommend that you try and get in touch with organizations or companies, businesses, whatever it is, groups that do that thing, and actually get some experience, because that will really look great on your CV. It'll also help you to understand what it's actually involved in doing that job. It might turn out you don't like it, so you can do something else. But the earlier you find out that, the better you'll do, I think. So that's probably good advice for any career that you want to do. Black hole is basically a hole in space-time. What that means, space and time are this kind of concept for right throughout space, right throughout the universe. And when an object like a star gets to the end of its life, it implodes. It gets really, really small by the force of gravity, gets incredibly dense. The gravity field around it gets very strong, and it basically creates a dimple, a deep, deep hole in the very fabric of space and time. Stuff falls in that hole, can't get out again. So if you fell in, you would stretch like a piece of spaghetti, and your body would get longer and thinner. You wouldn't last very long, and then you would slip into this hole. Not a good place to be. Don't recommend it. They did. Yeah, I remember when I was studying at university for my undergraduate degree, my first degree in astrophysics. I was the only woman actually on my course, and there were many, many men in the room. So it was, very male dominated. Everyone was very nice to me, but it was very obvious immediately that I was the odd one out in that sense. Um, when I was doing my second degree, my PhD, which is my doctorate, and that's more of a research degree, I was working in an environment, again, very male dominated. And I actually encountered some sexist comments and people doubting my right to be there. And that will happen in life. Actually, some people hold some pretty uncomfortable views and some pretty outdated views. So I think young people will sometimes encounter those. And what you have to do is really look at the big picture and say, well, if I can get over this and I can try and counter those ideas, those false ideas about who belongs where, in what spaces, and that I can have the confidence to take up space, to know that I belong here and that I deserve to be here, then you can get through that and then move on to great success and happiness in your life. So I think that's just a case of resilience and really sticking up for yourself, and hopefully young people can learn those skills and be really good at that. I think they would be smart if they didn't search for us, but I do think there's probably life out there. We haven't found it yet, and I actually wrote a whole book about this called Aliens and Other Worlds. It thinks about how we came about. We're built of chemicals. So on other planets, chemicals could have built up to create life, but it probably would be different because it would have to adapt to the life on that planet, the conditions on that planet. If the planet was hot, they would need to have protection from that. If the gravity was stronger, they'd have to be kind of flat and thin. So it's amazing to think about what life could be like on other planets. Is it more intelligent than us? Is it trees? Is it mushrooms? Is it, who knows? It could just be lava and slime and fungus and moss. We just don't know, but I reckon it's going to be cool to find out. I don't think I encountered too many challenges becoming an astrophysicist. I think it was staying in astrophysics that's the problem. Um, Getting into it, I was so passionate as a young person, so determined, and I wanted to, get into the field of research, and look at the stars and learn new things and use amazing telescopes and travel around the world. And I did all of that. And the first 10 years of my career was just a whirlwind of, different new experiences. When you get to the middle of your career, sometimes your role changes a little bit. Like in many jobs, you start going into management and doing different things, having different responsibilities apart from the core thing that got you there in the first place. And I think that's when the challenges come. So I think it's all about making sure that you're in the right space, you're in the right role, and again, that you explain what you want in that role. If you're going in a different direction and maybe your bosses are telling you to do things that you're not as interested in, it's about really explaining to them and standing up for yourself, and saying, no, I'd actually like to be doing these things. And if you're in the wrong job, then change your job. So I think every young person will encounter some of those challenges throughout their career. But again, it's standing up for yourself and knowing that you deserve to be there and you deserve to be happy. And when you explain that to people you work with, you'll often get quite a good reaction. Big shout out to Narrabri. That's where one of my favorite telescopes is, the Australia Telescope Compact Array. I've been there many times. So when two objects collide, space-time, so when there's one object in space-time and it has mass, it creates a dimple in space and time like that. When two objects collide, it creates this kind of gravitational wave in space, like a ripple. And it's almost like, imagine the surface of the ocean. You drop a big rock in there and it creates this huge ripple. So basically, it creates a gravitational wave which travels outward at the speed of light, and everything else bobbles up and down on this surface of this wave. and we can measure them using gravitational wave detectors. So great question. When Galaxies Collide, that was my first book ever that I wrote, and it's really, really cool. A galaxy is like a big city of billions of stars, and our galaxy is a big spiral shape like that. Our galaxy is going to collide with our neighboring galaxy in about 7 billion years' time. And when it does, there's so much space between the stars in a galaxy that they will pass through each other like ghosts, and they will come back and back and back, and then merge like there's wiggly lines going on. And then the middle black holes in the middle of our galaxy will collide and merge and create one giant black hole, and then there will be this huge kind of disruption, and lots of stars will appear, new stars that are created. It's huge mess and a cacophony of light and color, and it's going to be really cool, but it's not happening for 7 billion years, so sorry, we're not going to see it ourselves. It's like, you know, in the morning when the parrots are all screaming, a big noisy party basically, and it's going to be really cool. Wow. I mean, when I was just a scientist and just working on research, you know, very technical work, that was, I'd be maybe in the morning checking my emails for emails from collaborators who were living overseas. I was working on projects with people from all around the world. I'd then be working on maybe some data. So looking at how we use telescopes. We don't just get pictures from them when we're looking at space. I use radio telescopes, so we get kind of a series of complex numbers and things, and we have to make pictures out of these numbers. So I'd be writing computer code. I might be making graphs or plots or charts. I'd be making images out of the computer generated data, and I'd be doing some data analysis, things like that. You know, that was very, very technical and very one-dimensional. At the moment, working in my current role as Australia's Women in STEM ambassador, I'm working with my team on gender equity projects and research. I'm working on creating programs and tools for people to make workplaces better and fairer, and for gender and other forms of equality across society. We're making educational programs about STEM careers. So a day would very much involve a lot of different meetings with different people, looking at pieces of work and trying to make them better, and really collaborating with a lot of people across governments, across businesses, teachers, and lots of different organizations that care about creating a more just society. So it's very much changed throughout my career, and there is no typical day. I might be speaking to a group of young people. I might be speaking to the media. I could be spending the evening writing one of my books. There's just so much to do, and it's always fun, and I really enjoy my work, I must say. Think about when you go to a shop and the toys that you see and the clothes for young kids, they either have rocket ships and dinosaurs on them for boys, or they have, you know, fairies and princesses for girls and unicorns, right? That is teaching young people that the genders have separate roles in society. And we don't need to be doing that. Kids are interested in what they're interested in, and we need to let young people follow those paths that they're really interested in. So breaking down those stereotypes, allowing people to be interested in whatever takes their fancy and their passion, and follow those passions. That's what we need to be doing. So that is really how we can all encourage young people to follow their passions, whether that's STEM or something else. The government actually measures how many young people are studying different subjects. So every year we get the numbers, and we can see that in the last few years, the number of girls studying science and maths has actually increased to equal the number of boys at year 12. So we're doing really, really well with science and maths in gender equity. But what we're not seeing is girls studying engineering and computing, IT. So those areas are very gendered still. So we need to do more to help young people understand the options that are out there and what engineering actually is. So we've been working with a bunch of different groups to try to educate teachers and careers advisors and give young women opportunities to actually understand what engineering is and IT, and see if they're interested in those things. Because at the moment, there's a lot of stereotypes about those being for boys or for men, and we need to break those things down. I've always been, I guess, I've always had a character that was more likely to have affinity with boys and men. So I guess that was my natural character as a young person. Maybe that's why I found it a little bit easier. I was a bit tomboyish as a kid. And, you know, I almost found it easier to kind of disguise myself in that way. As I've got older, I've worked with a lot more women in my professional life, and I've found it very different, actually, a lot easier, a lot more collaborative, a lot fairer, and I've actually grown in my leadership capability because of that. I've grown to be have more empathy, and to be a better person, I think. So allowing your true character to come through is really important. But to do that, we have to have a safe space and a safe environment. And sometimes, you know, young people will find that in schools, an environment doesn't feel safe to speak up. And that's why some people argue for, you know, single-sex schools. That's not an argument I would make, but, you know, that is an argument. And I've certainly found working with women to be a more comfortable space. So it's an interesting thing, but I think we'll all experience that in different ways throughout our lives. And hopefully we all try and grow as people and be kind to the people we work with, because that's what you should really be aspiring to, I think. It's been great talking to you all. Thanks, TOI, for your amazing questions. I absolutely love them. I just want to wish you really good luck with everything you're doing, with all your great challenges coming up, and I know you are going to nail it.